Welcome into the Inside Scoop. We are live from Nashville, Tennessee. Today is Wednesday, October 1st, and I am your host, Josh Newberg. Week 6 of the college football season is here, and it's lining up to be a huge weekend from a recruiting perspective. We're going to talk all about it on this episode. We're going to go behind the scenes of some of the biggest visit weekends in America. Also, some big commitments are coming up. Rumors are starting to swirl about some major flips. We got the latest updates today on the Inside Scoop. But before we get into it all, you guys do me a favor. If you've watched one of these episodes this season, you only got one choice. Hit subscribe to the Rivals Recruits channel because things are starting to heat up and you're going to want to be a part of it. So today, what are we going to discuss? We're talking FSU recruiting as Miami comes to town, Alabama segment, Michigan, Ohio State, and Florida. Also, the number one defensive lineman in the 2027 class, Jalen Brewster, is set to come off the board this Saturday. So we're going to go behind the scenes of that one as well. Big show today. Let's get to it. So I'll go to Florida State recruiting. We got a big rivalry matchup in Tallahassee this weekend with the Miami Hurricanes coming to town. We've been talking about it all summer. It's expected to be a massive visit weekend with these two in-state programs facing off. We got Matt Lasser from War Chant. We're going to go behind the scenes of this big weekend. But first, Florida State fans, do me a favor. Hit subscribe to the Rivals Recruits channel. We are the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube. Jump on board, hit subscribe. All right, let's bring in Matt Lasser from War Chant. So last weekend's game against Virginia was a massive letdown for Florida State fans, losing to Virginia on a Friday night on the road. It wasn't supposed to be like that. This was supposed to be two undefeated teams. But in terms of recruiting, does that impact the weekend? I mean, we talked about this weekend all summer being a big one. Is it still expected to be what we thought it was going to be?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in general, whether these two teams are bad or not, this is always a big recruiting weekend for both teams. And that's just all the in-state rivalries in general, right? And a lot of kids had already been planning on coming. There's not many big games this weekend, right? Like when Vandy versus Alabama is your other big game, there's still going to be a draw for Florida State, Miami. And you know what? The other one was Florida, Texas, and that lost a lot of its luster over the last few weeks with Florida not being good and Arch not performing that to what everyone expected. So again, yeah, for in-state recruits especially, it's still the big one, and I think it's still bringing from all over the country as well.
Lots of FSU commits expected, and we're going to talk about that. But first, there's buzz about a potential flip going down this weekend.
Yeah, Steve Wiltfong put in a pick a few days ago for Corbin Fordham, actually an FSU legacy, but he's committed to Ohio State. Been committed to Ohio State for almost a year now. Popped last November, I believe. But this one was kind of some surprise buzz starting on Monday, and Florida State seems to be making a push. You know, I always thought they would take, or they always at least wanted to take more than one tight end. It's just a hard thing to do. Like a quarterback position, you don't really see many multiple tight end sets, but this Gus Malzahn offense, you've seen that a lot this season. And, you know, I think it'd be a good fit. And again, he's a legacy. His dad, Todd Fordham, played here. And now we're looking at, and I found this out last night, that he is likely to visit for the game this weekend. So with that, with all the buzz and the picks coming up to a flip, seeing him come on campus makes it even a stronger chance, right? That you look at it like, yeah, you know, this one looks like it's going to happen. You know, there's a bunch of other flip targets coming on the board too, like Xavier Lahesi, Oregon commit, Caden Hall, UF, and Cameron Wilson, Syracuse. But Corbin Fordham looks like the most likely, at least, to pop right away.
All right, we'll be tracking that one all weekend, and you guys can as well follow along on War Chant. But what top FSU commits, because it is a rivalry game, these guys like to be on the sidelines for this, so what top FSU commits are expected in?
The first one you look at, because he's been taking some visits elsewhere, is Jay Timmons, who was originally committed to Indiana. Yeah. Didn't get that FSU offer till late. Was at elite camp on June 1st, and that's where he really earned that Florida State offer. They turned around and got him on campus for an official visit a few weeks later, and he eventually flips. He was actually born in Tallahassee, and again, another FSU legacy. So that is one you look at because he visited Penn State last weekend. He's from Pittsburgh, so an in-state school. And from talking to him the day after, texting with him briefly the day after that Penn State visit for the Oregon game, the whiteout, he was like, yeah, you know, that was great, but I'm way more excited to get down to Tallahassee next weekend for FSU Miami. So you still kind of like the feel there. You like where Florida State stands, especially when they're able to reel them back in so quickly. Another one, Isaiah Williams, one that we never we never thought we would see this with Isaiah Williams, of him sticking with one school. So it's looking good because he hasn't visited anywhere else, and he's been at pretty much every home game this season. So that's another one. Chauncey Kennan, no worries there, but he's one of the other big commits coming. I mean, he has Florida State tattooed, pulled a Derwin James, so nothing to worry about there. But the list goes on, right? You have sorry, I'm scrolling through the list right now. Whitley Cadeau, 3-star, Tico Crittenton, Judah Daniels, who's the most recent commit, Jacoby Green, Xavier Tiller. Most of the class is going to be at this game. Darion Williams, Brandon Bennett, Jason Lopez. Jason Lopez is one you're looking at Miami a lot. So I haven't done the actual numbers of how many commits are going to be on campus, but it's going to be the majority of them.
All right. It's going to be a loaded sideline there with FSU commits. Now, Here's one FSU commitment, no longer Amari Thomas. He flipped his commitment from FSU to South Carolina, but he's back in Tallahassee this weekend. Is FSU still pushing to get him back on their commit list?
I think it's going to be interesting to see how much they push. From what we've heard, it was a significant NIL upgrade for him to go over to South Carolina. Not that was his only deciding factor, but it was one of those numbers where it's tough to turn down, right? So will kind of be interesting to see how Florida State goes about this. I think that the running back they'll push the hardest for, and we've debated this a lot over on our YouTube channel the last few weeks. It was always Derek Cooper, Carson Baker. Derek Cooper looks like he's not making it, obviously. But I think Carson Baker will be the one they push the most for, just because Florida's kind of in limbo. And that's one I'm interested to see if he shows up this weekend. That's no info that I know or anything. That's just intuition of a kid from the Atlanta area, not too far away, that you could see. But if Amari Thomas sees something in this team where thinks he can play early, or thinks just they'll be better than South Carolina, maybe that gives a little discount there. But we've talked about this a lot, just the way the FSU running back room is right now. I don't think you need to see them not overpay, but reset a market for a running back, just because you already did that with Usman Kroma, and you have Gavin Sawchuk, who still has another year. So it'll kind of be interesting to see how they push for the running back room, or see where they push hardest. My intuition says it'll be Carson Baker, or my feel says it'll be Carson Baker, but Amari Thomas will always be there. Again, he's a local kid from Bluntstown who can just come down the road whenever he wants. It shouldn't be hard to get him on campus.
Interesting storyline to follow. Maybe a little bit like Isaiah Williams, who was once a FSU. We'll see. Any other big names that we're still tracking? I mean, I know I saw Jay Lamar. He's a Georgia running back commit, is a maybe. Derek Cooper was a maybe, but Steve Wiltfong came out this morning and said sources are telling him Derek Cooper will not be in Tallahassee. But we know how these rivalry games go. It's always a late arriving visitor list for these in-state matchups. So who are some of the big names you're still tracking?
Yeah, Jay Lamar definitely one. He, again, another local kid who should, if he wants to show up, he can just drive the hour from Colquitt down. It's not that hard. But that's one that I think is going to be kind of hard to flip in general. He's always been a Georgia fan despite living so close to Tallahassee. But again, a lot of maybes. Like Johnny Jones is one you look to see if he'll show up, because that's another position where we don't really know where FSU is going to push. They need another offensive tackle. Javion Cooper, Syracuse commit, was one that looked like gaining a little traction, but now you have some others who could show up. We're just kind of waiting to see. Ben, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, from Buford, who's committed to Arkansas currently with the coaching change there. He officially visited to FSU. So that's an offensive tackle to watch. There's a lot of Josh, from working on the beat, we'll get the list Thursday morning, Friday morning, and we'll see what names are on that list. And that's when we'll get the last reports of, oh, wow, look who's showing up and who we didn't really expect. It's a last-second thing.
And then when game time shows up, there could be another name or two that ends up being in the stadium that you had no idea. So those are the possibilities, especially when it's a late kick. But with that game down in Gainesville, there's definitely going to be some recruits that have to pick which big game am I going to go to. So it's going to be a fun weekend in the state of Florida, whether you're in Tallahassee or you're in Gainesville. But today, we're talking to FSU fans. So talk with Matt and I in the comment section below. Miami versus FSU. How many points do the Seminoles win by on Saturday night? Put it in the comment section below. Let's talk a little Ohio State recruiting, because the Buckeyes are back in Columbus this weekend. Minnesota comes to town. It's a 6:30 p.m. Central kick. which means there's plenty of time for recruits to get to town. We're going to go behind the scenes of this big weekend with Jeremy Berm of Letterman Row. It's also Jeremy Birmingham's birthday, so happy birthday to him, or happy Berm Day for all that celebrate. Let's bring him in right now. Doing a little double work today, overtime. It's your birthday, and you're going to drop some inside intel here. Jeremy, let's start not with the visitors, but number one defensive lineman in the 2027 class, Jalen Brewster. He is set to announce his commitment this Saturday, and predictions have favored Texas Tech. But as we get closer, there's some buzz going around about Ohio State. How do you feel about the Buckeyes' chances?
It's funny, Josh. I mean, Ohio State's always believed that they were very much in the race for Jalen Brewster. His father's from Cincinnati. His mother's from Indianapolis. He's got a lot of Midwest roots. He camped in Columbus this summer, and the connection was really strong between Ohio State and Brewster and his family. And as you mentioned, when it was announced about, 3 weeks ago that he was going to be making a college decision in early October, his birthday, coincidentally, is tomorrow. And I think that that's one of the reasons why that conversation about a commitment has already begun, because in Texas, at the age of 17, you can start collecting your NIL payments, as far as I understand. So there's no point in wasting too much time. And in Ohio State, Texas Tech, Oregon, Texas A&M, obviously a number of schools around the country that are widely regarded as some of the biggest spenders in the NIL space are involved. Jalen Brewster is a generational type of recruit. You're talking a once every 4, 5, 6 year type of defensive tackle prospect. So it's not a surprise that these teams are willing to get into a pretty heated battle for him. Ohio State is not the freewheeling big spender that everyone likes to believe they are nationally. They prefer to spend that money on the current players on the roster to keep them in town. But when a player like Jalen Brewster is available, you have to make some concessions. The difference here, we'll find out over the next 48 hours or so. The Buckeyes are not here's a blank check, tell us what you need type of program, but they're certainly willing to compete, and the relationships that Larry Johnson has with the family, with Ohio State's national brand, its presence, its national championship contention year after year after year, those things are all very important. But in Texas, and especially the roots that Brewster has at Cedar Hill with Joey McGuire at Texas Tech, it does seem like the Red Raiders are probably still the team to beat right now. But I was told on Tuesday that someone should have an answer out of Brewster by Thursday, and Ohio State's definitely swinging.
Well, wow, yeah, pretty interesting. So do you think it's worth Ohio State fans to keep an eye on this recruitment through the weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll find out probably through some conversation on Thursday and Friday. But the thing is, it's still a year plus for till signing day for Jalen Brewster. So you should certainly remain interested anyway, just again, because of those Midwest roots, and you never know what happens in college football year to year. But I would, if I was handicapping it today, I would still probably lean towards Texas Tech. But I know that Ohio State has the wherewithal and the ability to surprise some people at times. I think sometimes the Buckeyes would prefer things like that stay quiet so they can sneak up on people, but that's not the case when you're the number one program in the country and the defending national champs.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, we will keep an eye on that one. Now let's turn our attention back to Columbus. Some big names expected on campus this weekend. Who are some of the names that you're tracking? Let's talk a little game time. The MLB playoffs are here. My buddy Steve Wiltfong, you guys know him. He does a show on this channel. He is on his way to the Cubs playoff games right now, but tickets are not going to be easy to find, especially when he's got two of his kids with him. But getting last-minute tickets can be frustrating when all you want to do is be there for the moment your team throws out that first pitch. Well, thankfully, the Game Time app gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing ticket prices, and it only takes a few simple clicks. The app's easy to use, and the Game Time guarantee, it means that you can trust that you'll get 100% authentic tickets on time and at the best price. Plus, the fees are always included, so what you see is what you pay. That's why I use the Game Time app. It's super simple, and it makes the experience of buying great tickets a breeze. Also, one of the coolest features I've seen is the Game Time lowest price guarantee. It's where Game Time will credit you 100% of the difference to guarantee you're getting the lowest price if you find cheaper tickets elsewhere. All right, here's what we're going to do. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use promo code INSIDESCOOP. That's promo code INSIDESCOOP for $20 off your first purchase. It's promo code INSIDESCOOP for $20 off your first purchase. Game time, last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
The big ones for Ohio State, really, there are three players that I've already sort of circled. Two of them are official visitors for the weekend, and one of them will be Dre Quinn, who's not taking an official visit. He's an unofficial visitor, the recent Clemson decommitment, defensive end from Georgia. Steve Wiltfong, as soon as Dre decommitted and reopened his recruitment, Steve put in a prediction for Texas. Ohio State has been working on this one for the last month and a half or so prior to the decommitment. There was discussion about him being in town for the Minnesota game. He's going to make that trip. It will be an unofficial visit, as I said. They will have at least two official visitors. I'm hearing that there might be four. Still trying to gather some of those names. I think I've got one of them sorted, but I can't release it yet. But Jacob Curry, a linebacker, former Northwestern commit who visited Oklahoma last week, he'll make his official visit to Columbus this weekend, and so will Kamari Bing, a Maryland commit at safety that the Buckeyes are really high on. He's been committed to Maryland for over a year. He's from St. Francis High School in Baltimore. It's going to be a difficult poll for the Buckeyes, but they are certainly presenting a desirable outcome for safeties and defensive backs around the country, and pitching that idea of, hey, Caleb Downs is not going to be here. You can see what this type of safety does in our defense and what it provides, and you can be the next guy. So after missing out on Braylon Womack 2 months ago, the Buckeyes have went back to the evaluation seats and started to rewatch everyone, and Kamari Bing is one of those guys that stood out to them. He's a three-star prospect, not the highest-ranked guy that you're going to look at, but they really like his traits, and he'll be in town this weekend for his official visit. And those three are the ones I'm really looking at now. Again, trying to get confirmation on two other official visitors, one of which I think Ohio State might be trying to see if they can get Landry Breed on campus again, the North Carolina State commit from Ohio, an offensive lineman. He was in Raleigh last weekend, so he's one that I think they're trying to work on. We'll see if he gets that scheduled or not.
All right. If Ohio State fan sounds like you need to be locked into Letterman Row, there's going to be some more names getting confirmed as we get closer to this one. The Dre Quinn name is really intriguing. Like you said, Steve put in that pick really fast for Texas, and Steve is right 99.9% of the time. I just thought it was a little premature. Now, he did say it was a projection. Like, that's where he thinks when this is all over. But I mean, I think Tennessee's in there. I think after this weekend, I think we're definitely going to be talking about Ohio State with Dre Quinn. So we'll just have to keep watching that one. Are they making him? Of course they're making him a priority, right? He's one of the top available pass rushers in America.
Yeah, and then they only have one defensive end committed. They've still been chipping away at Luke Wafel, the USC commit, and the high dollar target from New Jersey. But this interesting, we just found out this morning that Kari Wilder, Ohio State commitment from California, is expected to be back in town this weekend as well. So it's an opportunity for Kari to spend some time with Dre. And Ohio State is very interested in making sure someone's a culture fit. And when you're talking about a guy at Buford High School in the Atlanta area, coming from, I think he was at Atlanta Christian before that, he's a guy that Ohio State really thinks is going to fall in love with the campus and with the program this weekend. There's been a lot of talk between these two sides for the last year, but he's not been able to get up and visit. And now that he's uncommitted, he made it a priority to do that ASAP. And like I said, I know Texas was the team that was the runner-up when he committed to Clemson originally, and so it makes sense that Steve immediately went that way. But there was pushback from the Ohio State staff as soon as that crystal ball prediction, as soon as that RPM prediction hit, because they were like, "Hey, we're very much in this," and so you're going to see where they can go this weekend.
Yeah, well, Dre Quinn committed to Clemson on this channel, and throughout the summer we dealt with him, his father, his representation. Top of the line. I mean, no issues. They were a pleasure to deal with. They were very appreciative of using the platform. They were great. A very wholesome celebration. He had his little niece, brought her out with a Clemson hat on, and they just did it in his agent's office. It wasn't this big thing. So I definitely think Dre Quinn would be a great culture fit up there in Columbus. So we'll just have to see what happens with that one. That leads me to my next question. What's next for Ohio State recruiting? Is it just 2027 focused, or is there still some needs to fill in 2026?
There's certainly been a transition for Ohio State probably in the last 2 or 3 weeks. It's gone back to the trying to wrap up this 26 class and put the 27 class maybe a little bit on the back burner. Some of that is just a byproduct of Ohio State's schedule. They play at home this weekend against Minnesota, but then are not back in Columbus again until November 1st for the Penn State game. So you've got 3.5, 4 weeks to sort some things out. There's been rumblings this week that Corbin Fordham, Ohio State's longtime tight end commitment, may be on the verge of flipping his commitment to Florida State, where he's a legacy. Yeah. If that's the case, it would shed some light on why the Buckeyes hosted Louisville commit Nick Lauder 2 weeks ago when he was in town for the Ohio game. The Buckeyes are still looking to maybe flip Max Sutter, the tight end committed to Alabama, a big-time prospect from Illinois. Obviously, I mentioned Landry Breed. They're interested there. They're swinging for Adam Guthrie, the Clemson commit, hoping that maybe the struggles in Clemson can afford the Buckeyes an opportunity to really expand the conversation with Landry. There's even some discussion about another running back in the class of 2026, which was not the case this summer. Some of that, I think, is just looking ahead. Some of it they've been really impressed with Amari Latimer, a Wisconsin commit down in Georgia, in Tyrone, Georgia. Carlos Locken went and saw him 2 weeks ago and was really impressed by him from what I've heard. So I wouldn't be surprised if they try to get him up for a visit at some point as well. And they've got 21 commits, but if we assume the Corbin Fordham will end up flipping to Florida State, that only puts him at 20. That means there's 5 or 6 spots left.
Yeah.
Kamari Bing, Dre Quinn, Jacob Curry. They're looking for a linebacker, looking for a defensive end, looking for safety, looking for another corner. Still out there for Danny Odom, the Nebraska commit, shaking swings at Jay Timmons, the Florida State commit, the corner from Pittsburgh. So things have kind of shifted pretty considerably for Ohio State, and the focus went from the 27, 28 classes, which was all of the focus for the Texas game when the Buckeyes had 100 kids in town. The conversation has really shifted back to the 2026 class and trying to figure out how this class wraps up, and then focusing on the biggest fish in 27, guys like Jalen Brewster.
Yeah, and those spots in 2026, I mean, they got to come from flips because Dre Quinn's uncommitted, but there's very few uncommitted prospects in that top 300. So Ohio State is definitely going to be working some flips down the stretch. So Ohio State fans, talk to Jeremy Birmingham and I. Who is your top flip target? Also, let's get those happy birthdays going in the chat. Let's talk a little Florida Gator recruiting because the Gators and the Longhorns, they meet up in Gainesville this weekend. And this game carries a lot of weight. Maybe not the way that we felt it would before the season, but we got two teams right now on the precipice of possibly going into some danger zones in the season right now. But both teams have a way to get back on track, and it starts this weekend. So we're going to talk about how this impacts recruiting. I got Corey Bender from Gators Online, and we're going to break it all down. But first, Gator fans, do me a favor, hit subscribe. We are here talking Florida Gator recruiting all season long. Jump on board, hit subscribe. All right, let's bring in Corey Bender. And there's a weird feel in Gainesville right now, but it is still a big recruiting weekend with the Longhorns coming to town. Any flip targets going to be on campus? Mainly I'm talking James Johnson, Vodney Cleveland, 2 defensive line prospects from the state of Florida that are committed to Texas. Do we expect them to be in the swamp Saturday?
It'll be interesting, Josh, because like you said, interior defensive line, that's a huge priority for Florida this cycle. And those are 2 guys at the very top of the wish list. But the thing is, Florida and a lot of other schools, they're not big on hosting a lot of these kids hosting kids who are committed to the school they're playing on the field. I mean, we saw that. I mean, they weren't necessarily committed last year, but when Florida played Miami in week 1, you had guys like DJ Pickett, who had a cousin on Miami's roster. And you saw some of the recruits in the front row kind of like talking to the Miami players as they're coming off the field. It ended up being like a bad scene in Gainesville where even Florida staff members were trying to clear the way and not have the kids talk to Miami. Miami players were recruiting them in the front row. So since then, Florida and a lot of these other schools are trying not to host these kids that are committed to the schools they're playing on the field. So, but in Florida, I mean, they're in an interesting position, right? James Johnson, 5-star, number 1 D lineman in the country. This might be your only shot at hosting them. I mean, defensive line is a major priority. I mean, Caleb Banks is obviously going to the NFL after this season. It's a young group. They need to hit hit in the recruiting trail and make some big additions. Kendall Gerbil is in the class, but he's obviously sidelined all of his senior year due to injury, which makes I think interior D-line even more important. So James Johnson, as of right now, he's not expected, although he has said he wants to visit Florida before the end of the season. And, if Florida loses to Texas this weekend, will Billy Napier be the coach on Monday? So if you're Florida, maybe you kind of stretch it out a little bit and you say, hey, let's host these guys. It might be our only shot. And Rodney Cleveland, he's another one that he's told me in recent weeks he doesn't plan on visiting Florida or any other schools. But, as you know, Josh, in recruiting, that could quickly change. His recruitment, just like James Johnson, was heavily driven by NIL, revenue sharing, and stuff like that. And it's one of those things, even with Rodney Cleveland, Florida was leading for much of 2025 before he took that OV to Texas. So as of right now, we don't have them on the visitors list, but that could quickly change by Friday. And if Florida budgets and says, hey, even though they are committed to the school we're playing, this might be our only shot at getting them at campus. So, hey, let's bring them on campus this weekend.
Yeah, and my take is bring them in. If you talk risk versus reward, right? Like, what's 100%. The risk? The Gators get beat by Texas? Well, they're already committed to Texas, so, whatever. But the reward, if Texas loses at home to the Florida Gators, then maybe these guys do start looking at things differently. That'd be quite the experience in Gainesville if Gators are able to pull that off. So we'll see what happens there. But those are intriguing names. So
I guess the other worry too is of them recruiting other kids to Texas while they're there. I know that's happened with other situations. Those two don't seem like the type that would do that. I think they have much respect for Florida. But I think that's the other worry. Hey, if they come to Florida, Texas is winning pretty big in the first half. Jarrell McCoy, guys like that who are sitting maybe in the stands, are you kind of whispering? You might not see them publicly recruiting, but you just never know off to the side when you're sitting with them in the stands. So that's also the other worry.
You do make a good point. All right, so that being said, how many Florida commits are expected to make the trip? Because early in the season, it did seem like Florida was trying to load up on getting their commitments on campus. But now, you already got some guys taking visits elsewhere. CJ Hester, Hezzy Kent, they were on different campuses last weekend. So does Florida try to get their top commits back to campus this weekend? Hey, football fans, whether you're cheering on the Kentucky Wildcats or the Georgia Bulldogs on Saturday, October 4th in Athens, Georgia, make sure to drop by the Whataburger food truck during your tailgate. Get ready to bring home the W early with a hot and fresh Whataburger in your hand. And no matter who comes out on top, when you take your team to Whataburger, you'll feel like a winner with food made fresh and hot every time, 24/7. We'll see you at the game, and we'll see you at Whataburger.
Yeah, no, definitely, Josh. I think most of them will be there. Like Hezzy Kent, like you said, CJ Hester. I know Hester's expected. CJ Brana, another cornerback in the class, he's expected to be there. You have a lot of the main guys. Jarrell McCoy has said he's going to go to the game, but I know sometimes his plans change. He's up in Mississippi, so it's he's kind of a wait and see. But as of right now, you have so many guys from the state of Florida that are in this class. So I think definitely, even if they're kind of looking at Florida and kind of seeing what's going to happen with Gainesville, it's still a big game in their eyes, Florida versus Texas. I think a lot of these kids, regardless of Florida's 1-3 start, I think they're still looking at as a great atmosphere and a game that they definitely don't want to miss. I think the other thing, Josh, that I'm looking at too is, Florida State, Miami. That game for Florida couldn't have happened on a worse weekend, because you have Carson Baker, who's coming to Florida, and obviously Florida State, they're pushing really hard for him. I know Florida State is turning up the heat on CJ Brana, who's expecting Gainesville this weekend, but I know FSU has turned up the heat. So I think if it's not some of these 2026 kids, I think overall just recruits in general, that's obviously the bigger game, I think, especially for kids in the state of Florida. So as of right now, I think most of Florida's commits have said all the right things, and a lot of them aren't really entertaining schools. But guys like Hezzy Kent, though, Florida State keeps sending him graphics all the time. Miami does as well. So I think some of the guys that have kind of we've noted at Gators Online as ones to monitor, those are ones that could potentially end up in Tallahassee. Right now, Florida's expecting most of them on campus, but that could quickly change. So that's definitely one of the biggest questions I have going into Saturday is how many of these guys are going to be on campus, or even Georgia has a home game. I believe they play Kentucky at home. You could see some other guys go elsewhere. So we'll be monitoring it up until Friday.
Yeah. All right. So just overall, how much energy do you think that this Billy Napier coaching staff is putting into recruiting this weekend? Or is more of it on focusing on the job at hand, winning games on the football field. Have you started to see, I don't want to say recruiting slip, but maybe take a back seat to the priority of winning ball games?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, Josh. And I think the main thing is, like, when Billy Napier came on board, he said, hey, my Army, because he has a huge support staff up in Gainesville. So they have enough guys where a lot of these kids can come to campus. They have enough people to kind of wine and dine these kids and really show them a lot of love, roll out the red carpet during pregame. But when it comes to the actual assistant coaches, it is going to be interesting because I think, as many people know, if Florida loses this game and it's more than 2 touchdowns, in my opinion, I mean, I'd be surprised if Billy Napier is coach next week. Maybe he is, but right now his seat hasn't been hotter than it is right now. So I think right now it's going to be a good mix. I think these assistant coaches know they have to win this game, but Florida does have enough support staff members to really at least show these kids around and make a good impression. And Florida's 2026 class, for the most part, is almost complete as of right now, as far as the guys they have committed. That can obviously change if there is a coaching change. But I think, like, one guy, Isaiah Broughton, he's a kid from Texas, a big nose tackle. He'll be in town. He's committed to UNLV, but Miami, Auburn, Florida, they've all offered. And he's one of those guys that's, he's probably the main flip guy for 26 class that'll be in town. And he kind of said, hey, they haven't talked to me much about the stability there, but I'm sure we'll talk about it this weekend. So that's one kid who actually wants to spend time with the staff on Saturday. It's just an unofficial visit to kind of figure out, hey, what's the plan with you guys going forward? So I think right now they have enough support guys to really show these guys around. And I think, thankfully for Florida, I mean, most of the time they're going to be in the stands for most of the time anyway, watching the game. But I think if Florida wins after, I mean, I'm sure you'll see the staff swarm these guys and really try to reassure them what's going on. But if Florida does lose, you'll probably see some guys kind of trickle out of the stand maybe earlier and maybe not speak to the staff. So I think that's one of the glaring questions I have. I think most of the staff members are going to be focusing on the game, but they'll still have enough time to at least show their faces and kind of let these kids know they're wanted.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens either way. We'll be talking about all the recruiting news coming out of Gainesville this weekend. Gator fans, talk to us. How you feeling heading into the weekend? Give us your score prediction for UF versus Texas. Comment section below. Let's talk some Alabama recruiting because the game day crew is headed to Tuscaloosa this weekend, and so are top recruits. We're going to break it down with Tim Watts from Bama Online. So Alabama fans, do me a favor before we get started here. Hit subscribe to the Rivals Recruits channel. This is the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube, and we love talking Alabama recruiting. All right, let's bring in Tim Watts, and we're going to talk about this Vandy visitor list. But first, I want to ask you about a couple 5-stars that visited elsewhere. Jordan Edmonds and Xavier Crowell popped up in Athens last weekend. I just got to ask you, any concern for Bama fans over these 5-star visits?
I mean, I think you always have to be concerned because it's recruiting, but Xavier Crowell, I think he tweeted or posted on his social celebrating the win. I think he was still in the stadium. It was pretty soon after the game when he was there. Jordan Evans has been pretty upfront with the Alabama staff. We knew he'd possibly go to this game. Look, why wouldn't you go to this game? Why would you not go? You would have went, I'd have went, Trey would have went, all of us would have went to this game on somebody else's dime to sit in the stands. So you always have to be concerned. Georgia's a great recruiting staff, but they were full all in on them when they committed to Alabama. So it's not like Georgia's getting in late and just trying to make a push. But obviously, it's something you watch.
Yeah. All right, Tim, we saw Bama picked up a commitment yesterday, which is interesting because where was he at on Saturday, Tim?
He was another one that was at Georgia. So Bama it looks like they're going to have some good fortune with guys that visited for that game. Obviously, at that level, when you're recruited by both teams, and it was the case last year when Alabama hosted Georgia, Georgia had guys they were looking at them a little bit harder than Alabama that comes to watch. And Jatori Williams was at that game, had been offered by Georgia. Ohio State's a recent offer. FSU, Nebraska is one of the hottest offensive linemen in the country. So committed to Alabama fresh off that visit to Athens. I think he saw what he wanted to see from an offensive line standpoint. I doubt that pass out to Proctor in the flat hurt their chances. So obviously a nice little turnaround for Alabama. But they get a big guy in 2027 class. I think he'll end up being a stock-up guy as people learn more about him because he doesn't even have public huddle.
All right, so let's talk about this weekend. I mean, it's not the biggest game, but Bama Vandy is significant in 2025. It's crazy to say, but it is. So significant enough that College Game Day is going there. So what kind of recruiting weekend are we looking at this weekend?
Oh, I think this is a massive game. I mean, last year you didn't really know what Vanderbilt was. They had struggled a little bit before they really found their groove. This is a top 16 team. They got Diego Pavia, who's obviously, a gamer and gets a lot of respect. So the 2:30, I think it's going to be a good turnout. Bama does a great job of getting kids on campus. They do a good job of working those angles, working ahead, not waiting until the last minute. So the visitors list early on is the usual suspects with the commitments who've done a great job of rallying and coming in there. But a couple of guys I'm watching are Jared Doughty. He's the offensive lineman from Georgia 2026 who's blowing up. Alabama's been recruiting him for a while. He's coming in for a visit. And also an underclassman, Nash Johnson. Both of those were at the Georgia game, by the way, but 2027 Nash Johnson from McEachern, he's coming in for a visit. Alabama's been full throttle on him. He's picked up Georgia, a bunch of big offers lately, but we've seen Alabama's defensive back coach, Mo Lindquist, tweeting videos to him, and that's usually a pretty good sign of he's high on the pecking order for Alabama.
Okay. Well, we'll be talking about this big visit weekend coming out on Sunday on the Inside Scoop. We'll also have recruit reaction on Saturday night. We're talking a little bit about this, but right now, you got anybody on commit watch? Like, who could be the next to commit to Alabama, visitors or otherwise?
Yeah, I think we're looking at some 2027. We're seeing that pick up, and the reason that's picking up is because the junior film's going out. I wouldn't say they're on commit watch, so I'm going to be clear, but I think two guys they are watching is Corey Howard, who's committed to Georgia, supposed to come into Alabama for an official visit on Tennessee. He's had a lot of good things. Jared Doherty, again, not on commit watch, but two guys we're watching closely, reading the tea leaves.
Yeah.
That 2026 class is pretty full except for a few guys they want to add to it. But a 2027 can pop up, at any moment.
All right. Bama fans, talk to Tim and I. It's Redemption Saturday this weekend in Tuscaloosa. How many is Bama going to win by? Put it in the comments section below. We're talking Michigan recruiting. The Wolverines, they got a home game this weekend against Wisconsin, which means recruits are going to be on campus. So we got E.J. Holland of the Wolverine. We're going to break that down. We're also going to talk about some flip targets. And Charles Woodson Jr. is now a target for the Wolverines. So we're going to break it all down. But first, Michigan fans, do me a favor. Hit subscribe to the Rivals Recruits channel. We are the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube. All right, let's bring in E.J. Holland from the Wolverine. And we're going to talk big visit weekend, but first, Dorian Barney, who committed to Michigan in a wild commitment video. You guys can go watch that right here on this channel. That was back in July. He made his commitment, and now he is flipped to Ole Miss. So what is next for Michigan at the cornerback position?
Well, first of all, I don't think anybody should be surprised that Dorian Barney flipped. His recruitment has been a wild ride. He committed to Alabama, and then there were rumors about him being assigned to Texas A&M, and then to Penn State. Then he committed to Michigan. Then he visited Georgia Tech, and now he's going to Ole Miss. So I don't know if I.
But EJ, he did tweet his recruitment is now shut down.
If I covered Ole Miss, I would not believe that. But
okay.
Hey, but he gave us an all-time commitment ceremony with the
all-timer.
We always have that in our hearts. So, as far as losing Barney, he's a talented player. He would fill the nickel role pretty nicely in Michigan's defense. They'll look at a few different guys there, but I think the focus for Michigan has and will be the rest of the cycle to find an elite corner to flip. And that was the case even before Dorian Barney switched over to Ole Miss. They want a true elite corner. And so there are some guys on the top of that board. You look at LSU commit Haven Finney. He's a kid who has been to Michigan in the past. He's continued to keep in contact with the staff at LSU. Their season could go in a couple different directions. So the door could be open there. Kari Adams, who is committed to Notre Dame. I saw him last week, and he's been very adamant on social media that he's committed to Notre Dame, but he's still keeping in contact with Michigan secondary coach Lamar Morgan. Devon Benjamin, who's committed to Oregon, is another prospect they would love to flip. He would actually fill the nickel role very nicely. He can play some outside corner too. Very versatile skill set for Benjamin. So, those are some big names on the board. You go a little further down, you have Danny Odom, who just picked up an offer. He's committed to Nebraska. So Jamarion Vincent, who's committed to Baylor. So a lot of different options for Michigan at the corner position. I'm not exactly sure who they'll flip. I wouldn't say they're trending for anybody to flip as of today, but I do think Michigan will get the job done.
Yeah.
I think they're willing to invest from an NIL perspective. And Michigan secondary coach Lamar Morgan, he's known as a flip artist. He did it last cycle with Shamari Earls from Georgia, Jordan Young from Clemson, Elijah Dotson from Pitt this cycle, Jordan Deck from Baylor. So if anybody can flip an elite corner, it's Lamar Morgan. And when you have Michigan's NIL backing, when they're serious about a position, they can get the job done.
He's a flip artist. It's kind of like a sandwich artist,
I suppose,
Okay. All right. Let's talk about this weekend. Wisconsin comes to town. Now, it is a noon kickoff. It can be hard for recruits to get into town for that, but it is also a Big Ten matchup. Are we expecting any big-name visitors for this one?
Yeah, we're talking about flips and flip artists. Sandwich sounds good, Josh. But I would say some names to keep an eye on from a flip perspective. Linebacker. We talked about corner being a position of need. Linebacker is still a position of need for Michigan this cycle. Two big linebackers coming in, one being Nick Abrams, who is committed to Georgia. Like I said, Michigan flipped Shamari Earls from Georgia last cycle, so they're very capable of beating out Georgia for a kid that's already committed there. I think Nick Abrams, kind of like Shamari Earls last cycle, he fits what Michigan looks for in a kid, and Michigan just checks a lot of boxes for him. He's a high academic student. He really values what Michigan can offer on the education side. His father is a businessman, very well-known businessman in the Baltimore area. I think that business degree at Michigan, the Ross School of Business, that's really hard to beat and something that is very appealing to Nick Abrams. I think style of defense, he sees himself as a great fit at Georgia, but Michigan obviously runs an NFL-style scheme under Wink Martindale, who has a ton of NFL experience. So again, I just think Michigan checks a lot of boxes for Nick. He's always, seemed like a Michigan type of kid. If they get the NIL situation right at linebacker, which isn't a position Michigan has traditionally spent on the recruiting trail, they've more used that in the transfer portal. You see their top linebackers are transfers for the most part. I think that with Nick Abrams, he's been a top target for a long time. They could switch up the NIL approach there. Braylon Hodge, another name to know, big riser in the Rivals rankings into the top 200, I believe, currently committed to Michigan State. I don't expect him to stick with Michigan State. And I'm not saying he's going to flip to Michigan. I think this visit will tell us a lot more. There are a lot of contenders rising up in this recruitment: Colorado, Texas, Oregon. So I think Michigan has a really good chance here, depending on how the visit goes. But again, there are different contenders in that recruitment, but I really don't see Michigan State as a true threat to keep him. So those are, the big flip names that are coming in. A lot of underclassmen coming in. The big one to note here is Dakota Warrant. Michigan needs help at the wide receiver position. Warrant is a top 30 player, which means he's in the 5-star range. He's right in Michigan's backyard at Harper Woods High, which is in the Detroit Metro. His coach, Rod Oden, is a Michigan grad. He's a cousin of Michigan defensive back Jacob Oden. So I think that Michigan has done a great job with Dakota early on. And I think Michigan is going to be very aggressive from an NIL perspective. They need to get Bryce Underwood some weapons. They need help in that wide receiver room. And Dakota Warrant, a top target for next cycle.
All right, we will be tracking a lot of this intel coming out of the weekend as well, so stay locked into the Inside Scoop. Before we get out of here, I wanted to ask you about a familiar name. Charles Woodson Jr. is an emerging 2027 recruit out of the Orlando, Florida area, and he's picking up offers. Now, Michigan wasn't the first to offer. Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Florida State, some others got in there before that, but Michigan is involved. So what's the latest on his recruitment? In the end, do you think that he's going to be a Wolverine?
I do. Our national analyst, Steve Wilfong, put in a prediction, and I might be close to joining him there. I think with me, I wanted to see if Michigan was going to make Charles Woodson Jr. a top priority.
Right.
It appears they are now going to do so. I think Michigan, like you mentioned, Michigan was not the first to offer Charles Woodson Jr., which to some on the surface, that might seem surprising just because Charles Woodson, I mean, you're talking about a legend, one of the greatest to ever don a winged helmet. You would think Michigan would have offered his son as an infant, but they decided to take their time, which I think was smart. They wanted to make sure, hey, if we're going after Charles Woodson Jr., we want to make sure we don't just like Charles Woodson Jr. because he's Charles Woodson's son.
Mm-hmm.
We want to make sure we really like him as a recruit, that he is a guy that we feel can really help this program. And so they took their time, they evaluated him, and then Michigan secondary coach Lamar Morgan went out to see him during the bye week, actually stopped by his high school at 5 a.m. Now Woodson Jr. coming up for an unofficial visit this weekend. So I do think Michigan is going to push for him. I think, when you are the son of a legend, it's hard to pass up your dad's school. And so I think Michigan should have the inside track. And I think, like I said, Michigan played it smart. They really, really wanted to do their homework on Charles Woodson Jr., and they see him as a fit. They see him as a talented player, aside from him just being the son of Charles Woodson. So overall, I think Michigan obviously in a great spot. Wouldn't be surprised if the Wolverines can continue to add to their 2027 class with Charles Woodson Jr. They already have 3 early commits, and Woodson would be a valuable addition to that class.
Absolutely. All right, Michigan fans, talk to EJ and I. How you guys feeling about this weekend? And more importantly, we hit on a lot of flip targets. Who is your top flip target for the Wolverines? As we're just about 3 months from signing day, let us know. Comment section below.